Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Randy Surles. I'm a former military ranger, Green Beret. I'm currently a developmental editor, a book coach, a ghostwriter, and I have a couple of authors that I've helped in the past, and they actually have helped me do some stuff too. So we got Dan and Krista. So I'll let Dan introduce himself since he's the co-host, and then we'll get into Krista.
Hey, Randy. Dan Pace here, retired Green Beret and aspiring full-time author. Still working part-time, but really look forward to this show every week. It's a good chance to kind of just put out thoughts on best practices and how to become a writer, how to write, how do you do that, and a lot of it's trial and error, and it's a good chance for us to kind of say what's worked and what hasn't worked. So good to be on the show again.
Yep, cool. And Krista, welcome to the show. And could you introduce yourself real quick and tell us about your writing accomplishments?
Hi, I go by Kate Pimpinella. I am the author of the Time Ranger series, which was completely developmental, edited by Randy and then the Story Ninjas. I'm a retired paramedic, and now I am a full-time writer and a writing mentor for StoryGrid.
Yep. And I also work with contract for StoryGrid sometimes too, I guess. Well, most of the time nowadays. But we were just joking. So for anyone who's listening out there, that she wrote the Time Ranger series, which is awesome because I used to be a ranger. She used to also be a Canadian Ranger, so it's all connected. But so she used to stalk me on my podcast, and then she would take my war stories and put them in her books. I'd be editing the book, and her character Hawk, they're like, Hawk's a badass, and he broke his leg and crawled 2 miles through enemy territory. Like, wait, that was me. What's going on?
That's good, but I mean, it is. I mean, we gotta get our scenes from somewhere. I mean, you show me an author that hasn't taken a scene from a moment in life, like dialogue, awkward moments. This is where this stuff comes from, is real life. So, hey, good on you for adapting that.
I was very happy that she used it. I showed my wife, and then also I remember the first book. I was like, you know what, your Time Rangers, they need a Ranger Creed. I'm going to send you the American Ranger Creed. Maybe you can adapt it. And so, Dan, you probably know it by heart, but it was like recognizing that I volunteer as a Time Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of the time continuity and all that stuff. It was so great. Such a great adaptation. It was so awesome. I loved it.
That's great.
Yeah, it was so awesome. Anyway, really, what I invited Chris here today is because she wanted me to edit her new book, and we're going to start that next month. But she came to me, and she'd been working on a book for about 9 months, or something like that, maybe a year. And she showed me a couple of chapters, and asked me some questions about some plot developments and stuff along the way. And so she's like, hey, I'm getting kind of stuck. I really want to talk to you. So she signed up my calendar, and I was booked for like 3 weeks, or she was busy. So, and then the appointment came up, and she came on there, and she's like, well, you're not going to edit the book you think you're going to edit. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. She's like, I'm going to put that other book to the side for right now. I wrote a book in the last 2 weeks. I wrote about like a 70,000 word book in the last 2 weeks. And I want you to look at that. And I was like, oh my God, how did you write that? And that's why you're here. Tell us how you wrote it.
With a lot of sitting in a chair. Well, I started it using the new StoryGrid, the new things I learned from StoryGrid. I was like, I want to apply it from the beginning instead of trying to write a story and then integrate it in, as you know, how many revisions I had to do and rewrites on the original series that I did. So I started with, I never start any project unless I know my beginning, middle, end. The character is at the beginning, I know where I want them at the end. And I usually know what something's going to happen in the middle to get them to the end. So I started at the scene level, and I created that 11 question rubric for all the obligatory scenes that need to be in the book. And then I did a crisis matrix for each one of those scenes. So even if I have other parts of the book that are just like, hey, here's some world building, here's some character building. I knew the spine would work because I used that. And then I put I put them in the right act, and I did a little bit of world building, and I ended up being longer than the book did in the end. But when I went to write, all I was doing was writing into the first like global inciting incident, which is one of the, main scenes you have to have. And then it's like, okay, what's my next scene? Okay, the hero refuses the call. Okay, well, what do I need to happen? And I just write those things, and then boom, that scene was already written. And then I would just go until what's the next thing I need to do? Okay, how do I get there? And the next thing I knew, I'm like, I have 65,000 word book finished.
Wow.
Because I didn't have to stop and think about what should happen. Where are they going to go? I had it all planned out.
So to me, that's super fascinating, because Randy and I talk a lot about, do you kind of write inside out or do you write outside in, right? Do you go with the big and then create the small from it, or do you start with one scene and kind of expand it? What you're describing sounds very much like outside in, right? Like, okay, I'm going to structure the whole thing. I'm going to get everything out. I know all the criteria I need to meet, and then I'm going to start writing. And how do you feel that nested with just, I guess, the inspiration side of it? Did you find that was, were you constantly having to look back to the sheet, or did you already just have you done it so many times in your head that it just kind of flowed out when you were writing?
Well, I would keep going back to the sheet because I knew I had that strong spine already set up, and I would be working in steps. So I'm just going like opening chapter, which I actually, I don't want to keep anything around the book, but I put my global inciting incident in the first chapter. And so I knew I just had to get to it. So I wasn't even thinking about the rest of the book, because all I had to know was, what do I need to get here? And then when I got there, okay, I got to do that next. Then I do that. Okay, what do I have to do next? Because I already knew that it was already working. So I didn't sit there going, what should I do now? Where should they go? What do I have to do?
So it like prevented distraction. So it kind of like kept you from getting sidetracked by thinking about all these other things that you could have to develop. Like, oh, let me write that idea. But no, you're like, no, I got the structure. I just need to kind of fill it in as I go. That's awesome. That sounds really useful. I mean, obviously it allowed you to produce a 70,000 word book in 2 weeks, which is amazing.
So there's two parts to what she did that maybe listeners won't understand completely. So the story grid, the book, the original book that was written like 10 years ago by Sean Coyne, it talks about a full scat method. And the full scat method is based around, getting 5 commandments of each act, getting basically a crisis or a difficult question that the protagonist has to make a really difficult decision at, an inciting incident that starts off his objective for this act, and a resolution. And then there's 2 other commandments in there. So you get 5 commandments of each act. But what she's talking about also is the obligatory scenes. So Sean Coyne breaks down all books into 12 different genres. And he claims, and it seems to work from what I can say, is that each genre has obligatory scenes that the readers who pick up books, and if you say, hey, this is a thriller, they're going to say, oh, this is a thriller. Well, there's going to be an inciting attack of the villain, and then there's going to be a face-off with the villain. There's going to be an all's lost moment, not consciously like they're going to list these things out, but when they've seen so many thrillers that they realize that these are the things that usually happen. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward. Oh, it stars this guy and this guy. It stars Batman and Arnold Schwarzenegger's the Riddler or whatever. And we know they're going to face off at the end of the movie, because this is the way a thriller works. And they're going to have a face off, and there's going to be ideally, if it's a great movie, it's going to be a surprising and unexpected ending of how Batman's going to overcome Arnold Schwarzenegger when he's half his size and he's only got one arm tied behind his back, whatever. And there's going to be an all's lost moment when Robin dies, or we think he's dead or something like that. And that is going to be great too. So all of that things are expected in a thriller. For a horror movie, we have expectations for a horror movie. And when they don't happen, there's like, for each genre, he has like 5 or 8 different ones, depending on the genre. Romance, the lovers meet, the lovers will probably break up for some reason, either break up physically, or they'll actually like, I got to go work in France for 5 years. Sorry. And now they're separated by distance, or whatever, however that works. And then they're going to get back together, and he or she's going to have to prove their love after that breakup, that they're willing to take the next step. that's all accepted in romances. And if you don't have the lovers meet in the first 10 or 15% of the movie, like I had a book the other day I looked at and they met at the 70% mark, the romance lovers are going to go, that's not much of a romance. What was happening in the first 70% of the book? So she used that. She figured out her genre, which knowing her is probably action or thriller. And then she looked at the obligatory scenes that Sean says are in the thriller. And then there's also genre specific. Like if you have a time traveling, thing, then you're probably going to have tech that goes back in the past and you're going to have an advantage. And how does that work? And how do you hide it from them? And how does time travel work and all that stuff? So depending on what fantasy or military thriller, you're going to have current military guns and things like that. So you'll have those specific genre ones too. So she listed those out and she wrote those scenes. Now we're going to switch now. That's global, right? Now we're going to switch to what she and I are doing in StoryGrid contracting. We're working in the writer mentorship program over there, where we take writers and we teach them how to write compelling scenes so that every scene is compelling from start to finish and makes the reader want to turn the page. And we have 11 elements that are involved in that. And it's the first part of it. The first couple elements are about the conflict in there, and at least two characters are going to have conflicting goals for the end of the scene. They're going to have a primary goal at the beginning of the scene. I want to do this. The other one's going to want to do something else, and they conflict all the way through. And that's kind of where the action and the tension builds. And then one of them, the protagonist of the scene, is going to have to make a really hard decision to choose which way to go, to either do what the antagonist wants or defy the antagonist and do what they want. And there's going to be consequences of that. And that's all shown in that one scene. And we teach people how to build that conflict and how to build that tension and make the scene super interesting and also very emotional and meaningful. And so she used the 11 elements that we teach in that course to make those major scenes, because the obligatory scenes are the major scenes of the global story. They're the ones that have the highest impact emotionally for the reader. That initial attack of the villain on the hero or the hero's environment, the final face-off with the villain, the all is lost moment for the hero, the midpoint. All of these pieces are your big moments in the movie. If you think of any good movie that you've ever watched that's action, all these Marvel superhero movies and the Mission Impossible and all that, you can see those things in the movie every time if you're trained to do it, like Krista and I are. And they're very emotional moments. And so that's what you want to do. So she took those 11 elements, applied them to those obligatory scenes, and made those scenes super powerful. And then she started at the beginning and said, okay, here's the first emotional, the inciting incident, which happened to be in her first chapter. And then she looked at the next obligatory scene and she's like, how do I get from here to here? These things are already awesome because I applied the 11 elements. How do I write from here to here? And I don't know if she has applied those 11 elements to the other scenes. They're not as important, but eventually if you do apply the 11 elements to the other scenes, they'll also be compelling in their own way, just not as exciting because you have the most exciting elements already in there. And so that's kind of how the story grid works for helping people write great stories.
That's awesome. I would be interested to just hear, Krista, your experience in balancing that very structured approach with just, bringing it to life. Like, what do you, I mean, you almost make it sound like a Mad Lib, Randy, where you're just like, okay, we'll just fill in these 27 things and you're good to go. And I know it doesn't work that way. So I would love to hear how you kind of reconcile those two.
Well, it is kind of like that. I was just filling in the blanks, but I mean, I know like a lot of people ask authors like, oh, where'd you get your ideas from? Like, I want to be a writer, but I don't know what to write about. And it's like, well, my answer is, well, I'm a writer because I have a million ideas in my head and I don't know which one to choose. Like, that's why I can write stories, is because I don't have to think about one. It's just which one should I pick to work on. So when I start, I already know what the character arc is. Well, I don't know, some people call it the theme kind of thing, but I know A and B, where he's starting, where he's ending. And so in my head, it's almost just like a flash. I see the whole story. So now I am just filling in those blanks. I'm just answering because they're kind of written like a question. What is the inciting incident? What is, and I'm just filling them out. And I'm like, well, I want it to be this. So I just fill it out. And then again, and that's where a lot of your creativity comes too, right? Because you get to decide at that point. So people think, oh, it's formulaic, but it's not, because you have to use your creativity to make it interesting, or you're writing a textbook.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Do you ever surprise yourself as you go through it? You like start filling it out and you realize, oh, I just something just pops in there and it kind of derails things and you got to restructure anything? Or would you find that no, you actually see the whole thing and there's not a lot of surprises kind of go through it?
This is the first time I tried this, because I was a bit of a pantser before. So I tried to stay specifically with the first idea that came to my head. So if I'm like coming up with a crisis situation in a scene, I'd be like, okay, that's the one I want. I'm sticking to it and I'm not changing it. Because the minute I start doing that, it's going back to being a pantser, where I would have a million different threads appearing and never getting tied up because it sounded like a good idea at the time. And you end up with all these different tangents that don't all come together at the end. So I was told myself, no, I am going to stick with the idea and I'm not thinking about other ones.
So I gotta think that helps too. I think about the time frame in which you write, right? So when you write a book over a couple of weeks, it's probably pretty easy to keep the thread straight. But I mean, my last book took a year and a little bit. It sounds like your last book took longer than that. And you start looking to your early stuff and you realize without that plan, it can be very easy to kind of forget some of the threads you embedded early on because you got to keep going back through them because it's just been a lot of time and life has happened in the middle. I got to think this has got to help with that. Is that, or was it just the time frame? I mean, maybe you just had no trouble with that at all.
No, I think it was because I had the structure. Like you talk about like the phrase, like going off on the tangents. But yeah, the biggest thing I had the problem with is Randy and I joke about the Where's Waldo. I put characters in books that seem to disappear halfway through. I'd totally forgotten about.
Well, time travel, sure, there's a mechanism for that. You're just like, well, he was unborn. Like it's actually you, the reader. They just didn't pick up the subtle differences. Maybe I don't know. Can you cover up kind of like bad story management with like time travel? Does it work that way? Probably don't want to fall back on that too often though.
I will never write another time travel book in my life. It is so hard to keep track of what you're doing and making sure you do not break your own rules that you create for that time travel. It is so hard to keep that thread on top of trying to keep your characters and your plot and everything like that. It's like, no, I'm glad I got it done with because I will never touch time travel. I love it. It's my favorite. I love watching it and I like reading it, but wow, is it ever hard to keep track of how it should work.
So because when it's well done, it's so good, right? I mean, everybody's Back to the Future. I mean, obviously a classic, but it's so well done. You kind of touch those little moments, and it's great to have the little Easter eggs embedded that really bring the whole time travel to life. But if it's poorly done, it's just awful, right? I mean, you see right through it, and so I can imagine that's an extra challenge. Like you said, the story's hard enough to write anyway, and you're like, let's make a really complicated and kind of self-referential plot to make it harder to work.
So yeah, and it's so much obvious when I watch anything that's time travel. I pick up so quickly. Oh, that wouldn't work. Your rules are broken. Because that doesn't work. Like there's a loophole that wouldn't work, and I just pick up on it. So I'm like, it's ruining me for time travel stuff.
So the evolution of Chris's work when she came, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that when we gave me the draft of your first book, it was like, I've been working on this for 10 years. I haven't showed it to anyone and until you. And then I gave her some feedback. By the end of the year, I think I got it in June. Really by like October, November, I think I looked at it 4 or 5 times because she kept going back to the drawing board with all my suggestions. And like within a month, she's like, I'm ready for you to look at it again. And I'm like, oh, great, let's do it. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. It's so good now. It's so good. And then I give her notes because she actually paid me to edit it. And then she'd come back like a month later. I was like, I thought you were going to send it to a publisher. I was like, well, you gave me notes. I want you to check it again. And I was like, well, I gave you notes because you paid me, but it's so much better. It's ready for a publisher. I was like, we'll look at it. And I was like, all right, but I'm going to give you a discount. And I read it again, and I was like, gave her notes, and it's like even better. I was like, this is awesome. You should send this to a publisher. And then she came back like a month later. I was like, what are you doing? Stop it. And finally, I stopped charging her. I was just like, I'm going to read this, but I don't want to see it again until you send it to a publisher. And then the next book, I think it took you 2 years to write. Is that right?
And it was a little less than 2 years.
Yeah. And then the next book after that took like a year. And then she took a hiatus while she was trying to get the trilogy out there. And then she was writing this fourth book. And then she started she started this new book. So I'm excited to read it. I don't even know what it's about. I'm sure it's gonna be great.
So you touched on something really, really important in the writing world, I think. And that's like, when does perfection become the enemy of good enough? Like, at what point do you just say the book's done? Because I don't know about you, Chris, every book I've ever published, the second I publish it, I guarantee I'm going to open it and find a typo. And my initial read through, somehow, I don't even know, has been edited like 7 times. There's still going to be one footnote that is maybe just a space off, or just something. And it's crazy making. But if you never just publish it, if you never just like, all right, it's as good as I can make it, then it'll never come to life. I mean, how do you balance that?
And he says, stop sending it to me. Well, that was the first time anyone had read anything I had written. And I remember I'd already looked at StoryGrid, and this was early StoryGrid too. So things have changed since then. And I had thought I wrote the best book ever of it. Oh, he's going to like love me and think I'm the best thing ever. And then you hit submit. And every mistake comes alive in your head. Like, I just sent him the worst piece of crap I could even imagine. What was I thinking? Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's a thing. Like, the second you hit submit, you realize all the mistakes you made. Like, how did I let that through?
And I don't even know why that is, but you're right. It's 100% the same. I've never talked to anybody that had the same experience. It's just something about the act of like, oh, good, I'm done. And you're like, oh, whoa, oh dear. And it's always that exact same sensation, no matter how many times. I don't know if I could trick myself. Is there a way I could like fake submit and then generate that response and then like, aha? But I don't think so. Unfortunately, I think it has to be real, and we just have to just eat that mistake over and over again. It's just a tragic reality of life.
Well, I want to talk from Krista first. I want to hear the first reaction from the first edit report that I sent back to you.
The first one I was okay with. It wasn't until later that I needed 2 days to cool off before talking to you again. But no, the first one, no, I was actually surprised at how much feedback, because like I'd never seen that kind of feedback before. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what I can work with now. It's not that, oh, it didn't work, I don't like it. I was like, it had really good instruction on how I can improve it. Primarily the big mistake of my ending was totally wrong. It was an action like thriller, and mine ended in a court case. And I didn't even realize how stupid that was. And like, no, it's action. Where's the big fight at the end? I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. But it was just, there was so many good ideas that I was like, wow, I was excited. Like, I couldn't wait to apply it. So like the first one back, the first time I'd ever gotten real feedback back from anyone, I was actually excited and couldn't wait to get to it.
Yeah, and then she actually took my ideas and made them her own, which is what I want people to do. My ideas are just suggestions. Like my job is just like, hey, I think this is a problem. This is why I think it's a problem. And here's a couple suggestions on how you might fix it. And then Krista would take that and go, oh, I'm going to up that. And I'm going to take this and turn it around and fix that problem like this. And then she, I thought she knocked it out of the park on the second draft, and I never had to see it again, but she kept coming back. What about you, Dan, when you got our report back?
My initial reaction was I was irritated the first report I got back. I think you do that. We talked about it, but it was one of those like I had too much complexity. I was trying to tell my story and my wife's story at the same time. There was too much complexity in telling those two stories, and the interactions and the way those stories kind of stitch together weren't that well done. And so it was like, all right, you either need to flesh out this other story substantially because it looks like a good story, but you're not telling enough of it for the reader to get it, or you need to just delete it. And the idea that I'm just gonna, I don't know about you, Christopher, but I write a thing, I kind of become a little attached to the thing. Like, I've had to get better about killing the things that I love. And I know that's a cliche in the writing world, but I didn't want to, right? I mean, no, I don't want to get rid of that. I don't want to, I like it, but you're like, but it doesn't make sense the way it's written. I can't understand where it's going, and it's just not quite there. And I'm like, didn't like to hear it at first, but I mean, you're not wrong. It's just, that's what editors are for, right? You can always ask your family how your book is, and they'll say, great job. Now, it's not helpful though. It is not useful feedback because it doesn't help you get better. And I only have a few minutes, Randy. I do have to cut at 4:30 or 5:30 today. So, but yeah, if I ditch, that's why. I don't know, Randy, how's it feel?
Sorry.
No, same time, right? How about you, Randy? Like, what is an editor? You're an editor. You're used to editing feedback, so you got the thick skin, right? So when somebody criticizes your writing, I'm sure that it feels no issue. It's all purely professional. Like, is there a little sting? Like when you submit your writing to another editor, does it? Do you like the feedback? What do you think?
So, I've only been doing it recently. It's hard to fight. So Sean Coyne and his partner Tim have been editing my stuff lately. It's really hard to I mean, Sean's been editing books for 35 years. You know, he edited most of Stephen Pressfield's books and a bunch of others on top of it. And so when he says something, you kind of got to listen and go and, you know, think about because he's giving you the information on how he thinks it's going to be the best book. And the best book isn't always necessarily what I want. I mean, I do want the best book I can make it, but if he's saying the plot has to go this way to be the best book, then I'm like, well, that's not the book I want to write. And so maybe I'm satisfied with writing the book I want to write and not writing the best book that he thinks it could be. That's a creative choice, right? And that's what I try to offer you guys too. It's just suggestions. It's just when Sean says it, it's like, well, shit, if I do it this way, it'll be great, probably, because he's seen great books. He's seen so many bestsellers, but like that's not my dream of how this character goes. And so maybe I can tweak a little bit and meet him halfway without really giving up what I want. So that's one thing. Second of all, lately, I always give my stuff to Laura to look at, and you know what a monster she is, and so she'll call it the way it is, and I'm like, and then I'll find myself doing exactly what you guys do, justifying, no, you don't understand what I'm trying to do, and then I'll be like, you're right, I know you're right. And then I'll relook at it and I'll make it better. And inevitably, whatever she says, I haven't found without exception, there's a problem there. Whether her suggestion is what I take or I do it myself, that's the question. And that's hopefully what you guys get out of it too, is like, hey, I see a problem here. This is why it's a problem. We always try to do that. And then we offer our suggestions just to give you ideas. And if you take our ideas, that's great. If you go off and do your own ideas, that's great. And I will say that fiction for Krista and nonfiction for Dan are completely different, right? Nonfiction, I can't change the story. The story is what it is. It's only how much of the story you did or didn't tell. Like, hey, I think we need to expand this out because there's a really compelling story here and you just breeze by it. Or, hey, this seems like a tangent and doesn't seem to be focused on what you're trying to do in this book. Maybe this doesn't go here, or maybe it needs to be slimmed down. And those are but sometimes those are the important stories to you or to the people you served with. And so and that happens a lot in memoirs that I found is like, this is really important to me. It's like, then leave it in. If it's really important to you, leave it in. The only reason I wanted you to change it is because I was, once again, for both of you, and you both know this, you guys are writing books, and the books are in service of your reader. And so if you're not writing it for your reader, you are in danger of making your reader not really happy with the book or bored or something like that. And so as long as you realize that when you decide to make the changes, I mean, everything's fine. It's your book. You guys can, the authors can do whatever they want with their book. They can have their creativity and do what they want with their book. My job is to say, this is, you told me what you wanted to do. And this chapter or this, this part of the book doesn't seem to be in service of what you told me, but that's up to you.
I love that distinction that you said between, well, I'm going to help you write what I think is the best book, and you have to reconcile that with your vision of the book and decide, hey man, I'm just going to give you my best advice. I think that this is the thing that would be the most appropriate. I think this will make the story the best. I can resonate with the reader the best. And then you as the author have to ultimately pick whether or not you do that. I actually read a really good quote from Stephen Pressfield. I think it's posted on his website. You just mentioned him, but Tides of War. Every time I pick it up, it is a kind of difficult book to pick through when you compare it to a lot of his other stuff. It's just a little complicated, a little convoluted. It's hard to kind of follow some of the characters. He's like, it's my favorite. It's the one I like the best. And you could just imagine these same discussions that even a guy that's written as much really successful stuff as him still is like, nah, no, I get it. It's still, that's what I want to write. And you'll have to make that decision.
Well,
I do have to punch out, man. Otherwise I'm going to be late. But
thanks, Dan. I'll probably just talk to Krista for a little bit more and we'll pop out too. But
I like Krista. It was great to meet you.
I'm going to ask Sean about that book and see if he gave him some stuff. Because when you get too big, right, they're going to buy the book no matter what. So
I would love to hear his insight on that friction point right there. But another time. It was great to meet you, Christian, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hi, Dan.
Well, I mean, that's why I brought you on. I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Krista. That's I can't wait to read it next month.
I was going to say when you were talking about what it's like to give your work to Sean, you are my Sean Coyne. When I give it to you, I take what you give back to me as like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. That's why now I get that report back and you've said, certain things about certain things. And I'm just like, I get all angry and mad. I'm like, no, you're wrong. And then I'm like 2 days later, he was right. So I just end up doing it anyway. But that also helps with keeping an established relationship with the same editor because you build that trust, right? Like I trust what you say because we've been working for sort of like over books rather than just randomly picking off an editor off of like Fiverr or something.
I think I've had clients where they're just like, you're not a client anymore, you're just a friend. But I've had clients where they think that I purposely want to just cause them problems by giving them feedback. I mean, I just want them to write the best book. And it's my experience, my opinion. And they take I know why they take it personal because it's their baby, and they spend a lot of time, energy, blood, tears, and sweat on it. And I understand that, especially having written some short stories of myself to get published and things like that. I haven't written a novel yet, but before Story Grid, I wrote a couple novels. I don't think you found those yet, Krista. But anyway. So and some of them come back and they act like it's a personal affront that I purposely wanted them to write a worse book, and it never is. And I understand where it comes from. I just don't know why it's such a serious conflict. It's only happened like twice, but it was really it was a nasty fight when it happened. And I didn't fight. I was just like, it's your book, man. I'm just giving you my opinion. And you paid me for my opinion. That's what you paid for. And I wanted to give you, I owe it to you. That's what I owe you. If I didn't give you my opinion, I wouldn't be what you paid me to do. And but they can never get past it. But I'm glad you were one of the first people I worked with. Because if I had worked with two of those people in a row, I probably would have quit a long time ago.
Well, I think some of it has to do with a bit of, I don't know if it's ego or resistance to work, because writing a book is hard. It's not just writing a story. It's like getting it to work is a lot of work. So when you spend all that time and you create what you think is the best manuscript that you can, you get feedback saying, hey, we know how to make it better. You know, it is an overwhelming amount of work to have to
Yeah.
put into it. So it's easier to just go, no, I'm right, you're wrong, as opposed to going, no, I'm going to keep working at this.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I think we can end this episode. I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you back at work at StoryGrid.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yep. All right. Now we're off.